Hello guys, this is NJ from the MBTI tier lists. Here we are for yet another mother of a tier list. In today's episodes, we will be contemplating on the question of which MBTI personality type would be the best pediatric nurse. So we're talking about like the kids nurses, the nurses who like are in the hospital wards, in the kids wards, taking care of kids. So, and this is like in a long line of series of all nursing specialties. If you're planning on becoming a nurse, check the other videos. Different specialties require completely different skill sets and are vastly different. So if you're wondering what would suit you based on your like MBTI type, check the other videos as well. And you're gonna learn something and maybe make a wiser choice in your choice of specialty as a nurse. And maybe be inspired to become a nurse to begin with. Okay. Now, the most important thing is to determine which functions would be the best for a pediatric nurse, and get some like idea like what is it like, being a pediatric nurse, like what kind of a skill set does it require? So let's start from the feeling functions, FEFI. Now, I would say that like arguably of all of the nursing specialties, like the feeling functions would be arguably the most needed when being the caretaker of kids, like in a kids wards. Of course, most of the nursing specialties, they require emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and so on. I mean, you are a caretaker. You're taking care of people's needs. You have to take people into consideration. You have to be compassionate. But, there are specialties like the operation room, for example, where, the patient is sleeping, so you don't even talk with anybody, so you basically need no feeling functions for anything. In the ICU also, the patients are in such a bad condition that you don't always even interact with those guys. In the kids wards, the kids ward, the pediatric ward is essentially like the MedSurg wards for kids. You're running the daily lives of these kids, their hospital lives. You're taking blood samples, bringing the medications and foods and washing them or helping them to get to the washroom, and you do all of these daily kind of menial caretaking, nursing activity, do IV drugs, change the IVs, that kind of stuff. Now, the reason why I like, the feeling functions when it comes to pediatric stuff are amplified, like the need for feeling is because kids are so sensitive. Kids are really emotionally sensitive people. Even the kids who are low emotional IQ kids, they are still kids. And kids, they're all vulnerable. They're all afraid. They cry easily. Everything hurts them. And they have a complex with reality. They have a massive crisis circumstances. And it's a horrible thing to be in a hospital as a kid. I mean, it's a scary experience. And you're just a small guy, you don't even understand what is going on. You're literally at the mercy of the forces as a kid. And you're in a strange place. So when treating kids, you need to be extra emotionally intelligent. You need to have extra social skills. You really need to fucking care about people or the kid will cry. And if you don't know how to handle kids emotionally, and it is mainly through compassion. Of course, sometimes you need to have some authority and so on as well. But it's mainly just this nuanced compassion and this understanding emotions and emotional interactions and being able to put yourself into the feet of the kids. and so on. There are types that are like really bad at it, and so on. So I like FE would be the penultimate function for the pediatric wards. It not only gives you emotional intelligence and high level of social skills, it's also the more kind of like outwards expressive emotional function. FI also gives you this deep, emotional intelligence, arguably even greater than the FE, but the FI, it's introverted. With kids, like you need to make contact, you need to be able to talk with them, and you need to be kind of like able to take responsibility and kind of like be the adult in the room and somebody that they can rely on. Kind of like the alpha person, like emotionally, while still being soft and sensitive and compassionate and so on. So like FE, I think that it's simply better than FI. That being said, I do like FI still in the S tier as well, because I mean like FI does give you some insane emotional intelligence that will be really useful for a pediatric nurse. So the feeling functions are here just like super like the need for them is like amplified. Okay, so what about the other functions? I mean like you're doing stuff with your hands, like you're doing like daily procedures and like failing an IV on a kid. Like, oh my God, man, that is a bit of a different story, like, than failing an IV on some like granny who barely like notices that they have been needled 10 times by now. Kids' bodies are 10,000 times more sensitive. Like you're inserting a needle into a kid, and that's like fucking like, inserting a sword or a dagger, like into an adult. And kids are so much more sensitive. Everything hurts 10 times more for the kids. So like needling a kid, they start crying. So like you better have some handcraft skills, to do all the medical procedures in a way that hurts the least. Like you like really need to be talented with your hands. So I would say that like SI and SE would be like super important, like TE as well. Like TE is an executional function. So TE users usually are pretty stable and good with their hands. They tend to be good at like executing physical stuff, despite the fact that it's a thinking function. Like TE like tries to control the outside reality, and TE is always trying to, do everything perfectly. So these are kind of like the three like hands functions. With the TE, you get a little bit of brains, you get a little bit of understanding of like, medical problems as well, and like solving logical puzzles and so on. So what about the brains functions? So yeah, like as a nurse, like you need to have brains for sure. Like, kids can have super complex medical problems. And like as a nurse, like you need to understand like medical science. Like the doctor can't always make it, and sometimes you are dealing with critical circumstances medically, like independently without a doctor. And then just like the job of a nurse is to observe the patient and then like relay the information and the observations to the doctors. So like you need to be observant, but you also need to like figure, like you need to have brains, like you need to like understand what you are seeing, like, and what to make of it. And these are the intuitive functions. So like but out of the intuitive functions, I like NE, all of the brain functions. I like NE would kind of be the best, because think about NE, it's actually like an interactionary function with the outside reality. NE users are actually like usually like really good at like interacting with people, and they tend to have like high social skills and high like interactionary capabilities, and that translates really well to interacting with kids as well. Now SE has that same quality. Like SE users are usually like really like energetic and lively people. SE users gonna make a kid laugh. It's the same thing with the NE users. So like with the SE and NE, like you're getting like some like social skills like out of these two functions. like outside of their like observation, like outside of like the SE, you get the hands and the interactionary capabilities. With NE, you get the brains and the interactionary capabilities. With NI and TI, they are kind of like purely abstract functions. So they're not the greatest as brain functions, you know, for when in like especially as standalone functions. You can like only get the brains out of these things, and you don't get any other benefit. Now, okay. I mean, of course, NI can also be used to understand people. So I do like NI is a good function because it lets you get like insights about the kids, even about their emotions and so on. Now, TI maybe is the worst brains function for the pediatric wards because you literally don't get anything out of this except like logical analysis. Now, with these thoughts in mind, I would say that like, you know, SE would be the better sensing function. I mean, of course, as a nurse, you have to be super careful, and SI and TE are kind of like the carefulness functions. NI people tend to be also kind of like careful about stuff. But like with SE, you got the hand capabilities, but you also got like even more interactionary capabilities. So I would say like SE would be the strongest, like kind of like hands function. That being said, like the hands are so important, like SI and TE would be definitely S tier. I would say like NE out of all of these brains functions for the pediatric wards would be an S tier function, because with NE you got the brains and you got interactionary capabilities. You can make kids laugh. You can like, you know, joke with them, and you can like with NE you can handle like, you know, even if they're crying, like you're gonna be creative about it, like you're gonna come up with something and so on. So the only problem with NE is that it's a super hazardous function. So like as a standalone function, it's not the greatest for being a nurse because it makes you so goddamn hazardous. And that being said, I do think that the benefits of the NE like outweigh the negatives here when it comes to kids. Now, NI, I mean, it does give you such insane insight when it comes to understanding the people around you, and kids especially. It does give you the brains and make you a little bit more careful. So I like NI could also be, well, I don't think that it could be at the S tier, because it is such an abstract function. Like kids need you to interact with them. You know, kids need you to be a funny guy and you know, be able to interact and come up with like funny things to say and funny interactions and make everything like lighthearted and so on. NE is so good at it. So yeah, like as standalone functions, this would be the tier list for the functions. You know, the real magic starts coming when you start combining these functions, and then you get to the types. So let's get into it. Okay, guys, so here we have the types. So let's begin with the NFs. Let's begin with the ENFJ. So ENFJs like have a main extroverted feeling function, which is hands down the best function for kids. No way around it. They have a secondary NI, which is not the best function for kids, but like in the case of ENFJs, it's almost like the FE turns that NI into something super awesome. Like the NI, like in the hands of an ENFJ, you know, ENFJs have like a tertiary SE. That's like FESE going on. So ENFJs are like hyper interactionary people. You know, FE and SE are both high level like social interaction functions. So ENFJs are the kind of people that they can react to like 10 different social cues and signals in 1 second. ENFJs are completely insane level like interactioners, and they all start with compassion. They have the highest emotional intelligence and social intelligence and so on. You know, like the inferior introverted thinking wouldn't matter that much. The secondary NI gives you enough brains like that you would ever require as a nurse. And the FESE combo, like you get to interact, like you're really talented at interacting with kids, taking them into consideration, understanding their needs, you know, being able to like take care of them. And then that like NI also, it not only gives you the capability for understanding like the medical stuff, but it also gives you that like intuitive insight about the nature of the kid's personality and emotional life and so on. So like in the middle of FESE, the NI for the ENFJ actually becomes like a superpower, like intuitive superpower on taking a deep, like intuitive glance at the nature of the kid that you're talking with and so on. So ENFJs, of course, hands down, they would be unquestionably an S tier type, arguably the best type for being a pediatric nurse. Like if you're like an ENFJ planning on becoming a pediatric nurse, just go for it. Like you were born for that shit, and you probably know that shit, you know, like you get along with kids so well that you just know that you were born for that shit. Like kids need that like extra compassion and emotional intelligence and caring, and you just have that shit. Like you were born to take care of people and be concerned about their needs and so on. So what about the ENFP? Leading with NE. Once again, NE is an insanely high level interactionary functions. ENFPs are some of the greatest interactioners of the entire system, super quick brains, you know, and in the hands of the ENFP, the secondary FI, it's almost like the other way around, where like with the NE, because FE is definitely like the better emotion function for pediatric nurses, but the FI in the hands of an ENFP becomes almost like FE. So with the ENFPs, like there's no downside to the FI because they're leading with just like a ultra extroverted and interactionary function. So the introversion, like of their feeling function doesn't, you know, make them in any way, you know, less capable in being the outwards, you know, focused, energetic, extroverted, you know, compassionate person. You know, the tertiary TE gives them some hands, some capability in executing and doing the needling and everything properly. The NE gives them all the brains in the world for medical stuff. ENFPs are a little bit hazardous. You know, like for adults, I didn't like ENFPs would only be like an A tier guy because of their hazardousness, because as a nurse you have to be careful. But I mean, like ENFPs, they are so unimaginably talented in interacting with kids and getting along with them and taking care of them that like ENFPs just like have to be at the S tier. There's no way around it. I don't like ENFJs because they're like a little bit more careful, you know, which is like make like a little bit better nurses in that respect. So I like ENFJs have to be like above the ENFP and the S tier, but I didn't like, you know, ENFPs would make for some of the best like guys to interact with kids and take care of them. No way around it. Okay, so the INFJ leading with NI, it's a bit of a too abstract function. You know, tertiary TI, once again too abstract. So INFJ is one of the most abstract types. You know, that secondary FE, I mean, like that NI-FE combo for kids is just like super juicy. You know, like it just makes you the most compassionate interactioner in history. So INFJs, they would also just like get along with kids so well and be able to understand them so well. But the problem with INFJs is that they got like two brains functions, NI and TI. INFJs would almost have like a little bit almost like too much brains for the medical stuff as a nurse, and the problem is that they're doing it at the expense of SE, which is their inferior function. So like INFJs are not that talented with their hands, they're kind of too abstract. You know, in general, like I like INFJs tend to be really stressed when it comes to doing physical stuff with their hands, especially if somebody's like well-being is on the line. So like INFJs would simply not be the best people to needle a kid. They would be living in a state of panic, and they're not like the most talented people with their hands and so on. They also have like a polar TE, which makes their executional capabilities even lower. Like INFJs in general, like as a nurse, are somewhere like B tier. They can get the job done, or maybe even C tier or something. That there's so much physical stuff that you have to do as a nurse that it's like not the forte of an INFJ. Now, that being said, for a pediatric purpose, with pediatric, you know, kids, as your patients. INFJs, they're so compassionate that, I mean, like the FE is so powerful and needed when you're dealing with kids. That like I like INFJs, which is like, once again, with the power of their compassion and emotional insight alone, be really good as like pediatric nurses. So I like INFJs are an A-tier pediatric nurse. So what about the INFP? So INFP is leading with FI. Once again, it's not the better feeling function, but I mean, it is your main function. So INFPs are the most introvertedly compassionate, type out there. And that secondary NE, once again, brings some extroversion to the FI and so on. And so on. Now, that being said, like INFPs can be kind of silent types. I like sometimes maybe kids would require like a bit of a more extroverted person. But that being said, like INFPs just like radiate this like insane level of understanding and accepting people as who they are, and feeling the other person's pain. Like INFPs, they might not be as extroverted about it. But I like, at the end of the day, INFPs tend to be really good with kids, and like in their silent compassion, they can just like kind of like transmit this like super, care, for the other person. That being said, I like, once again, that like FE versus FI and so on, like, INFPs, they are like a little bit too introverted and so on for kids. That being said, they do have the tertiary SI, so they have like a little bit of hands. The problem with the INFPs, they have an inferior extroverted thinking and polar SE, so they actually like, they're kind of bad at executing stuff as well. And as a nurse, like you run around the whole day just executing physical stuff. Once again, it wouldn't be the forte of the INFP, but yeah, I mean, they would have to be at the A tier because of the level of their compassion. I do not like INFJs with people like a little bit like more talented in like doing the actual interaction. INFP's main function, FI, is not like really like an interactionary function. I mean, the NE is, but it's their secondary function. I like, FE, it's just like more outwards focused, pure like social interaction function and compassion all in one. So I like, as a pediatric nurse, INFJs, which is like be a little bit better, with kids. The FE is so powerful, so I like INFJs would be above the INFPs. But I like INFPs would be A tier as pediatric nurses because of their level of their compassion. Okay, so what about the ENTJ? What about the ENTs? Now the NTs, I mean, they are thinking types. ENTJs, they lead with TE. TE is really talented in all of like the needling stuff and so on. Their secondary function, NI, gives them all of the medical brains in the world, and their SE only further increases their capability in doing all of the medical procedures, like the most competent, guy in history. The problem is that with the ENTJs, like they don't really get that much out of the NI intuition for people. I mean, they do get something out of it. Like ENTJs probably like understands people like a little bit better than like, let's say, like ISTPs or something because of their secondary NI. But ENTJs, they have like an inferior introverted feeling. So that is simply like a little bit problematic. Like with adults, I mean, you get away with it usually. I like ENTJs, generally speaking, make for like super awesome nurses. I mean, like they're like so talented in actually like getting the job done and so on. But with kids, like having an inferior feeling function with kids would be just, it simply would be a little bit problematic, Now, okay, ENTJs, they are extroverts and they have high social skills. ENTJs do tend to get along with people. And I do like an ENTJ could probably make a kid laugh. And they could make many of the boy kids can like respect them and so on. I like ENTJs have many of these like indirect positive qualities, that would actually like be pretty feasible. But with any more like sensitive, emotionally sensitive kids and so on, I still think that the ENTJ would be the best caretaker for those guys. Now, all things taken into consideration, I think like ENTJ would be like a PT or pediatric nurse. You know, they're so talented with the medical stuff, and they are extroverts, and they do. I think the ENTJs would be kind of like feasible in getting along with kids. Like, anyways, I mean, they are kind of like, they do have some like social wits, even if they have low emotional intelligence, and so on. So yeah, I like ENTJs would be like a feasible pediatric nurse. I think that they could get the job done, and I that they could even like, you know, take care of a kid like well enough. They just wouldn't have like much talent for the emotional stuff. Okay. So what about the ENTP? Leading with NE, hyper X, like you know, interactionary function, tertiary FE, that like NE-FE combo. And ENFPs are the greatest social interactioners, and ENFPs like people. They're like happy-go-lucky people, and they love interacting. And ENTPs are some of the like the natural like funniest types. So I like ENTPs would like generally be better with kids than ENTJs. Like in general, their secondary TI doesn't like give them like really like anything. You know, they have like, once again, like a little bit too much brains for being a nurse, maybe. But they would definitely figure out the medical stuff. The only problem with the ENTP is that they are also like super hazardous. Kind of like a little bit too hazardous to be a nurse. You know, they have like an inferior introverted sensing, which just, you know, they don't like really have any like, you know, like physical function, like, except their like, you know, inferior function. And that being said, I don't like ENTPs, they get along with kids so well. They're so talented socially and emotionally, and they're the funniest guys ever. I like an ENTP, if they became a nurse, they would like really have to like overcome their introverted sensing, inferior introverted sensing. But like ENTPs, they're so talented with people, they're so funny. And ENTPs can also be super like compassionate and everything. And they're also like stress-free and kind of like okay with chaos and running around and so on. And the spontaneousness of kids. Like ENTPs are just as spontaneous as a kids. I actually did like ENTPs would be like an A-tier nurse, and I'd like they would be even better than an INFP. You know, simply because like you do like benefit from like the NE-FE like emotional like extroversion. It's like outwards focused. So yeah, I like ENTPs would be better for pediatric nurses than INFPs at the A tier. What about the INTP? So INTPs leading with TI, secondary NE, tertiary SI. Where is their emotions? Like, I mean, they basically don't exist. They have an inferior extroverted feeling. So, I mean, like, INTPs can be quirky and kind of funny in their own way, and that secondary NE can make them kind of mischievous. And, you know, I actually did like INTPs also like have like a weird way of getting along with kids in their own ways. And so on. So like in some like random circumstance, they might get away with it, but like I don't know, man. INTPs have the lowest emotional and social intelligence, and they're low on both. So yeah, they're kind of like Asperger. So like pediatric nursing would require like some of the highest level of emotional interactionary capabilities and emotional like spontaneousness and emotional intelligence and everything. The INTPs simply don't have that shit. Okay, so like, you know, but somehow weirdly, like it's a weird thing. Like somehow like INTPs, like kids are so simple and stupid. You know, I like INTPs almost like weirdly could maybe get along with kids relatively okay. You know, but I don't know, man. I mean, they still have to be at the C tier. It would definitely be like a funny thing if like an INTP would ever become like a pediatric nurse, okay? like I would want to see that guy, and they might just become like the Asperger, like weird mascot nurse for the, you know, kids to make fun of or some shit like that, you know. But, you know, competing with these other guys, I don't think they could compete, you know, and so on. So what about the INTJ? Like INTJs leading with NI, too abstract, secondary TE, a little bit too brutal. Tertiary FI, okay, you have some emotional function going on. INTJs, I mean, they have like a polar FE. So like it really depends on the INTJ. Like some INTJs who have like high, FI would probably be cool, in being just like, pediatric nurses and so on. And like it's a bit of a hidden miss, but they do have that like tertiary FI. So I think they would be. I mean, they just like are more emotionally intelligent than the ENTJ, for example. They have medical brains for days with the NI. Like they could handle the most complex medical circumstances and be the greatest in doing it. That secondary TE gives them some executional capacity, so they should be okay with their hands in needling and that kind of stuff. But I like an INTJ, like wouldn't be the greatest in talking like a crying kids out of it, basically. I don't think I like ENTJs might even like be better in dealing with like a crying kid, but like I don't know, ENTJs can also be kind of brutal in their own ways. This is just like a compromise, of a guy for a nurse. I like INTJs at the end of the day. They're like a little bit softer than the ENTJ. They have a little bit more emotional intelligence and they can get the job done physically. So I like INTJs would be B tier above the ENTJ. So what about the ESFJ and SFs in general? ESFJs lead with FE, secondary SI. I mean like tertiary NE, which only further gives them interactionary capabilities like FE-NE combo. Once again, it's one of the strongest interactionary combos. And with the ESFJs, it starts with FE, which is even better for that shit. So, I mean, they would have to be at the very least above the ENTPs. Secondary SI gives them the hands, gives them the capacity of doing careful needling. ESFJs are some of the most compassionate people. They're some of the most capable in taking care of person's physical needs, because that SI for the ESFJ is wired, to serve the purpose of the FE, which is to just take care of people. ESFJs would be just like an unquestionable S tier guy. I think they would even be above the ENFPs. Would they be above the ENFJs? ENFJs do have stronger intuitive capabilities when it comes to people. I used to be a caretaker myself, and I used to know an ENFJ caretaker, and like, man, was she talented, with people. And she actually became like kindergarten caretaker in the end. So like I just have to say, man, I like ENFJs actually. Like, I mean, these two types are just like the greatest of all time for these shits. But like it's like in this particular literal case, ENFJs have that like intuition with kids that is also like at the next level. I somehow just like have like a little bit more respect for ENFJs because they have that like insane level of social intelligence and emotional intelligence. ESFJs are like a little bit more like reality focused and just like so focused on like the physical needs of the person. ENFJs can do the physical needs while having that insane level of intuitive insight about people. I have to say, like ENFJs would probably be above the ESFJs, but this will like a tight battle, maybe impossible to determine. Like in the end between these two guys, I would leave it like this. Okay, ESFJ definitely, unquestionably S tier. If you want to get into pediatric nursing as an ESFJ, like you are the most talented person for that shit, go for it right now. What about the ESFPs? Leading with SE, super good extroverted interactionary function. Secondary FI, it's a bit introverted. It's a bit like, and so on. But like the SE makes the ESFP so like expressive. It's kind of like the same thing with the ENFP, with the exception that they have like more hands because they have the SETE going on. So like ESFPs would be the most talented people in like needling the kids while making them laugh and so on. So ESFPs would be like super pediatric nurses as well. They would be like the super version of the ENFP, like the ENFP who got their physical shit together, basically. ESFPs are super, like they can be super talented with people and interaction and so on. ESFPs have that FI sensitivity. Yeah, they would be at the very top of the S tier. Like ESFPs, they can be funny when they want to. They can have fun with the kids. ESFPs are like some of the most kid-like type themselves. They would know how to make like the life of the world like fun for everybody. They would be the kind of like funny action nurse that you can go and have adventures and laugh and interact and play games and everything. Like ESFPs would be so awesome for pediatric nursing. Okay, guys. So what about the ISFJ? ISFJs leading with SI. They have the hands. Tertiary TI, they got the medical brains enough. Secondary FE, they're the most compassionate person ever. ISFJs are arguably the most talented person in actually like taking care of somebody's like literal physical needs and making somebody comfortable and so on. ISFJs are super caring people. I didn't like ISFJs. They're like sometimes a little bit too introverted, and they don't have that like alpha quality to them like at all, basically. Like many times ISFJs are kind of like at the mercy of the forces in some ways. Like kids, I do think like kids benefit from having an extroverted guy who's taking care of them. Because kids need to be relying on you. Like you need to be carrying the show, basically. Like ISFJs, they're super compassionate and caring, but I'm not sure like if ISFJs are the best people to carry the circumstance, like socially and emotionally. Like I like ISFJs would be definitely like an S tier guy, but kids simply need somebody to lean on and to rely on. And somebody who they feel is like an authority, like an adult, mother or father figure. So like there's like an element of you having to be like a little bit of an alpha when it comes to like being the leader of kids, and not just like authority wise, but just like emotionally, and all of these like extrovert feelers. I mean like. They all just like have that like I can carry this circumstance for you, man, because I'm so confident and capable, and you don't have to worry about it. I'm so compassionate. They understand you completely, and even if you're like an introvert, like it's okay. Like I can talk for you, and I can read you. I understand how you're feeling, and you don't have to tell me, man. And so the ISFJ is not the greatest in such activity. Okay, the ISFJ is like, yeah, I like the ISFJ would definitely be S tier simply because they're the best caretakers ever and so on. But I don't like ISFJs are the best at like handle like every imaginable social and emotional circumstance that would arise with kids. I think ISFJs are simply a little bit too introverted, so I like ISFJs would be at the bottom of the S tier. There's nowhere around it. Okay, so what about the ISFP? I like ISFPs with that secondary SE, like almost have like a little bit more like adventurousness to them than ISFJs, for example. ISFJs can be like a little bit uptight, like every now and then and so on. Like ISFPs lead with FI, so they have like the depth of compassion of an INFP, but then they have that secondary SE, which gives them like super good hands for doing all the medical procedures and needling and everything, but it also gives them the adventurousness of like an ESFP. So like with an ISFP, you can have fun. And ISFPs can actually be like really funny people when they get on with it. Like, I have like some of my best friends of all time have been ISFPs. They were all super funny fucking people. And especially with kids, like ISFPs can be so funny with kids, man. ISFPs are so good with kids. And the tertiary NI would give them enough medical brains to understand the medical circumstances. So I like ISFPs would also be like a really like a ideal guy for the kids, they have the hands, they can do all the menial medical procedures better than ENFP. ISFPs are masters with the SEFI combo of like interacting with kids. And that tertiary NI also gives the ISFP like a deepening, insight and intuitive revelation about kids and emotions and the person in front of you and so on. Which the ISFJ, by the way, doesn't have. Like ISFJs have like an inferior extrovert intuition, so ISFJs are not that talented in reading people as, for example, ISFPs and so on. There's like an uptight element to ISFJs every now and then. They're like a little bit like too introverted and highly strung. The ISFPs is like a relaxed guy that you can have fun with, and they will take care of you and so on. I like an ISFP would be hands down an S tier pediatric nurse, no way around it. So what about the ESTJ? Or the STs in general? ESTJs lead with TE, secondary SI, tertiary NE, okay, some interaction capability, inferior FI, like if you look at the functional stacking of an ESTJ, I mean, that's like the doom stack. That's like you don't have anything for kids. The tertiary NE actually makes ESTJs a little bit quirkier, little bit more open to fun and games than you would think. ESTJs are many times not as uptight as people make them out to be. ESTJs tend to have high social skills. They're super grounded. I like ESTJs in general get along with people better than ENTJs, for example. ESTJs actually, in my experience, tend to be relatively okay with kids. They have that like funny old man with kids thing going on. ESTJs are the kind of a type that they almost like know that they don't have any emotional intelligence. So they have like this almost like self-irony about it. It's like that the ENTJs, well, I mean the ENTJs is going to have that same in some ways. But I like ESTJs, they're so much more grounded. ESTJs see people as people and they feel that they're people among others. ENTJs can be a little bit elitistic every now and then and so on. I actually think that like ESTJs are these like guys, that they just like, I like ESTJs. Somehow ESTJs have more of a quality of like being one like of the people somehow. So I like ESTJs would be better than ENTJs with kids. I thought they would be better than INTJs probably. I think so, ESTJs, the TESI combo, I mean, like, they got the medical brains and they got the medical hands and they would be really talented in executing the medical procedures. I'm tempted to put the ESTJ to the A tier, but I did like I'm going to leave them at the B tier. I think that ESTJs would be the best of the B tier for taking care of kids. Okay, so what about the ESTP? ESTP is leading with SE, secondary TI, gives them the medical brains, SEFE, tertiary FE. I mean, like, ESTPs are some of the greatest interactioners in the entire system. Like, if there's one fucking guy who can make a kid laugh, that would be like the ESTP. If ESFPs are fun, ESTPs are the most fun of all of the types with kids. Kids love ESTPs. ESTPs, they love kids. ESTPs are the greatest, and they have the hands for days. Like, ESTPs would be the greatest at needling the kid while making them laugh, and ESTPs, they have that heart as well. If a kid is crying, that ESTPs can talk with them and so on. I like ESTPs would be like an S tier pediatric nurse. And I actually think that like an ESTP would probably like secretly enjoy doing it a lot. You know, they would be the fun nurse at the wards. The kids would love the ESTP. The ESTP would love the kids. There's no way around it that they would be better than ISFJs for even for kids because of this reason. I think they would be better than ENFPs because ESTPs are not hazardous. They get their shit together. They're better at doing the physical, medical stuff and so on. I just like think that like ESTPs would make for some of the best pediatric nurses out there. I mean, they would be all heart, all warmth, and the kids would love them. Yeah, I got like nothing but good things to say about the ESTP for the pediatric nurse. It would be like definite S tier. What about the ISTJ? So ISTJ leading with SI, good with hands, secondary TE even better with hands, brains for medical stuff for days, tertiary FI. So ISTJs can have some emotional intelligence. The SI-FI combo is actually a relatively powerful combo for, especially for taking care of people's physical needs. Now with ISTJs, it's the same thing with INTJs that it's like, it's a bit of a hit or miss. It's that they're on a scale. Like some ISTJs that I have met, like I used to work as a caretaker, and some of the most compassionate caretakers that I ever met were ISTJs, believe it or not. But you know, there are also these like super highly strung and uptight prick ISTJs. Although like I would doubt that if you became like a pediatric nurse as an ISTJ that you would be the uptight version. You know, the kids probably get all the high FI ISTJs, I mean, I hope. And you know, making the assumption to be a high FI, you know, like ISTJ, you know, I like ISTJs would make for like relatively wonderful nurses with kids. That SI FI combo would be really brilliant. Once again, I'm not sure if the ISTJ would be the best at talking a crying kid out of it, you know. That's the problem with the ITJs here, that like they're not the greatest in like if a kid is crying in saying something that would just overcome it and make everybody laugh, and but at the same time making the kid feel, you know, being loved and so on. That being said, I mean, ISTJs are so good at like taking care of people. They're so good with the medical procedures. They're so meticulous. And that SI-FI is a super powerful combo for taking care of people. So I like, you know, like a relatively strong FI, you know, ISTJ would be at the top of the A tier. I would say that. I would have to say that basically. Yeah, they're so capable of doing the medical stuff, and you know, the SI-FI combo, you know, I think it's almost like it should be enough. It should be enough compassion and emotional intelligence and caring for a kid, basically. Yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, so what about the ISTP? So TI major, really bad function for kids. Secondary SE, good interactionary capabilities. ISTPs are action people. Tertiary NI, you know, more brains that you don't need. Inferior FE, oh my god. Like, oopsie. You know, that being said, like ISTPs, I mean, they're just like so kind of like action oriented. That like, you know, I like ISTPs actually get like along with kids like relatively well. It's a stupid thing. Like I like ISTPs in some ways get along with kids better than with adults. You know, ISTPs can be surprisingly spontaneous with their SE and surprisingly like fun adults for kids. And you know, ISTPs are the kind of people who tend to let the kids just do their stuff and they're not pricks about it or anything and so on. So I actually like weirdly, I think that like an ISTP tends to get along with kids, you know, like ISTPs are like some of the funnest adults for kids out there. It's almost like weirdly their like lack of emotional sensitivity doesn't like matter that much with kids because they're so like SE. And the thing about like kids is like all kids are super physical people. You know, it's almost like all kids have like SE. And with ISTPs, like with adults, like many adults don't give a fuck about SE, man. But with with ISTPs and kids, like you can go on an adventure with kids as an ISTP. So it's almost like kids, like are better for the ISTP because they're all kind of like adventure people and fun-loving, spontaneous guys like the ISTP and so on. So I actually that the ISTP would, funnily enough, be like an A-tier pediatric nurse. It's a stupid thing. I like ISTPs have almost some like secret magical superpower with kids. They're like, yeah. Like once again, I'm not sure if the ISTP would be the best at like talking somebody out of crying or something. But ISTPs, they might come up with some like funny stunt or something and still make the kid laugh. Because like, and the thing about like ISTPs is that like ISTPs are weird because you can kind of like rely on them as a kid because they don't give a shit. But ISTPs, it's not that they don't give a shit about people. It's like in the company of an ISTP, you realize that you're probably crying for nothing, and ISTPs are really good with that kind of shit. In just like being like, and they don't even have to say anything, It's almost like it's easier to accept brutal reality in the company of an ISTP, and that somehow like weirdly works with kids, man. There's just no way around it. Okay, I like an ISTP would be like an A-tier pediatric nurse. I know this is a little bit surprising, but I like they would be funny pediatric nurses. I would definitely like want to see an ISTP nurse at the pediatric wards, I would like to see that shit. It would be so funny, man. I like ISTPs would also kind of like become the mascot of the kids or something, and so on. They would definitely be the odd guy at the wards, but I'd like they could like hang in there and they would be kind of funny guys or something, and so on. So yeah, this is the list. So I do not like look at these S tier here. They're all feelers except the ESTP. The pediatric specialty for nurses. I mean, that's just like it's all emotions, man. It's all social emotional interaction. Yeah. So that's the shit, guys. Now, if you are a nurse and you're wondering about or you're wondering about becoming a nurse, and you're thinking about your MBTI type and your specialty, like I have other videos for nurse specialties. There's something for everybody. Nursing, it's a wonderful field. So, if you're wondering about these things, check the other videos for ER nurses, OR nurses, ICU nurses, and everybody, and the normal MedSurg, HomeHealth, elderly care home nurses, and so on. So, yeah, it's the video, guys. See you around, and bye-bye.